Hey everybody, welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show. We're out here at Thompson High School to get you ready for what should be the most exciting week of the high school football season this Friday night. Several big matchups to touch on, including our game of the week that will take place right here at Warrior Stadium as the Thompson Warriors, number 1 in the state, play host to number 5 Mountain Brook, a matchup of undefeateds. The region championship on the line for the Warriors. If they can pick up a win in this game on Friday night, they do clinch the region championship. So plenty to touch on in that game, our game of the week, but so much more happening across the county featuring local football teams. The Briarwood Lions, they'll also have a chance to stay alive for a region title as they take on the number 2 team in Class 5A, the Ramsey Rams, and then several other big matchups as well taking place Friday night. The Helena Huskies will be looking for their first ever region championship if they can pick up a win this Friday night at Jackson Olin. So 3 teams that are battling for region titles right now, and then you also have teams like Chelsea that are still playing for home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. You've got an in-county battle between Spain Park and Oak Mountain and plenty more ahead this Friday night. So we're going to talk about all of that on this week's show, break down every game, give you what you need to know, what teams need to do to be able to pick up some big region wins on Friday night. And then we'll also, at the end of the show, name our SCR Stars of the Week. And for the second straight week, we had some bizarre numbers and some crazy stats put up there by several players across the county. So we'll talk about all of those players and what they were able to do this past Friday night and some big wins and big matchups in region play as well. So we'll touch on all that, all of those exciting games, but we're going to start right here with our game that's going to take place at Warrior Stadium. It's the number one Warriors and number 5 Spartans in our game of the week. For the second time in 3 years, the Thompson Warriors this Friday night will have a chance to lock up their region championship here in Class 7A Region 3. So obviously a big battle as far as that goes for Thompson on Friday night. But nonetheless, this is a matchup of 2 undefeated teams that have played some great football to this point in the season. Thompson, they've done it a little bit on both sides of the ball to this point in the season, but overall the offense has just been unbelievable to watch, averaging close to 50 points per game right now and putting up 35 last week against Vestavia Hills, the number 8 team in the state. They win that game 35-21. We'll talk a little bit more about what it means to put up those kind of offensive numbers against that Vestavia Hills defense heading into this matchup against another tough and physical defense in Mountain Brook. But the Spartans, they're also sitting undefeated to this point in the season at 7-0, 5-0 in region play. Both teams are. And Mountain Brook coming off a wild win last week as they take down Hewitt-Trussville, a game that they trailed 10-3 in the final minute of that game. The offense struggled to get going in that one, but then they score a touchdown, make it 10-9 with about 15 seconds left on a 2-point conversion attempt. They try a flea flicker that is fumbled, but then picked up by the quarterback and heaved towards the end zone and caught for the 2-point conversion as they win that game 11-10. So they enter this one with an emotional win last week to stay undefeated. And the Thompson Warriors, they've just been handling business each and every week of the season. I said we would talk a little bit more about what they did against Vestavia Hills last week. And if you look at that Vestavia defense coming into that matchup, it was a defense that hadn't given up more than 16 points to any opponent so far this season. And Thompson not only put up 35 points in that game, they had several offensive playmakers really step up and produce a lot of yards in that contest. And you see quarterback Sawyer Pate, 300-plus yards and 4 touchdowns in another inspiring performance. Wide receiver Mike Petway, close to 200 yards receiving in that game with a touchdown, and the majority of which came in the first half. Trey Roberson, another receiver that stepped up and had close to 100 yards receiving. And then you look at the running back position. They didn't have any Jarrett Crockett this past Friday night. It didn't matter. JoJo Gator stepped up and had around 150 rushing yards for the Warriors against one of the best defenses in the state. It was a great performance to see what that Thompson offense was able to do last week, and that's just been the case this entire season. It was their lowest point total of the season, but still 35 points against a defense that was giving up just 9 points per game going into that matchup. So this offense just continues to roll along each and every week, even against a very good defense. This week, it's going to be a similar test. Another team that wants to win on the defensive side of the football. Mountain Brook's a team that comes into this matchup looking to make a difference on the line of scrimmage, specifically on the defensive side of the football. But when you face this Thompson offense that's scoring 46.6 points per game, it's going to be tough for that Mountain Brook defense to be able to hang in there and keep up with what this Thompson offense has done so far this season. The Spartans right now, though, giving up just 16.1 points per game to this point in the season. They've given up 14 or less in the last 3 weeks. So they can keep themselves in this game defensively, but eventually we saw last week, Thompson's going to score points on just about everybody they play. Mountain Brook's going to have to score some points in this matchup, and the problem that they've had has been on the offensive side of the ball at times. They did show against Spain Park earlier this season that they could win a back-and-forth game, winning that one 56-49, but at the same time, we've seen some offensive struggle throughout the season from this Mountain Brook team as well. It's a team, they're going to want to run the football on that side of the ball with quarterback Strother Gibbs and running back Sam Higgins. If those two guys can get going running the football, that's what makes Mountain Brook dangerous, a team that could come in and win this game combined with a strong defensive effort. But it's going to have to be those two guys on the offensive side of the football. Those two are the ones that played well against Spain Park. They're the ones that tend to play well each and every week that this offense has a special performance. And even when they win each game this season, those guys have been a big reason why Mountain Brook has been able to score some points to be able to pick up those wins. And this week they're going to have special performances because what you see from Gibbs at the quarterback position, a guy that likes to run the football, he's going to run it. He's a passer second. He can put up yards in the passing game and be successful because he's a very efficient quarterback when it comes to throwing the football. But at the same time, he's going to want to run the football. And then you've got a running back in Higgins that's also going to want to run the football. So you got two guys that in that backfield this Thompson defense is going to have to be focused on. I think if they can stay focused defensively on shutting those two down, it's going to be tough for Mountain Brook to be able to keep up with what we see from that Thompson offense. Obviously, when you look sideline to sideline on offense for the Warriors, they've got so much talent. If you look at receiver, you've got guys like Roberson and Petway that we've already mentioned, and then you jump around, you've got guys like Sam Reynolds and J.B. Mitchell as well. Both of those guys are easily capable of going for more than 100 yards in the receiving game as well. And then at running back, you've got three guys in Jarrett Crockett, JoJo Gators, and Brandon Franklin. And then obviously Sawyer Pate at quarterback, who's been one of the more efficient quarterbacks in the state with, I believe, just one interception to this point, going around 200 to 300 yards every week, almost 4 touchdowns every week. He's the guy that's going to put up big numbers as well. So you know this Thompson offense is going to score some points, even against a very good Mountain Brook defense that's obviously been playing some good football this year and comes in with some momentum. But at some point in this game, Mountain Brook's going to have to score points to stay in this. We saw that last week. Vestavia team started out the season scoring 45, 45, and 49 in their first 3 games, but their offense started to struggle. Mountain Brook in a similar situation. Vestavia only put up 21 against Thompson last week. Mountain Brook's going to have to come in and do the same thing. A team that was pretty good offensively early in the season, a couple of times throughout the season, but they've really started to falter there on that side of the ball the last few weeks. And just look at a 14-7 win over Vestavia Hills, and then an 11-10 win over Hewitt Trustville last week. The defense has kept them in those games and has been a big reason they've won those. But this week, the offense going up against a Thompson defense that's giving up just 19 points per game. If Thompson can hone in, focus on Higgins and Gibbs in the backfield, that's going to be a big-time difference because I just don't think Mountain Brook can keep up offensively with this high-powered Thompson offense that's putting up close to 50 points per game. So I think that's going to be the major difference. When you look sideline to sideline, the Warriors are just more talented. Mountain Brook's defense hasn't had to square off against talent at every position like Thompson has. You can focus on 1 or 2 guys that might beat you, but at Thompson there's 5 to 6, if not more, that can beat you on that side of the ball. So it's going to be tough for Mountain Brook to come in here and do that. I think that's the key difference in this game, but nonetheless, a battle of undefeateds. They're both obviously very good football teams. If you have an off night, then Mountain Brook's going to come in, make you pay, so the Warriors have to be ready in this battle. I think at the end of the night, they get it done, and I think they have that second region championship in the last 3 years, a team that in 2014 was 0-10, and just a few years ago, back-to-back 5-5 seasons after that, they are now looking at a second region championship in 3 years. Unbelievable what Thompson's been able to do here under head coach Mark Freeman. The other big 7A game that's going to take place in the county this Friday night, that's between two county teams, the Oak Mountain Eagles and Spain Park Jaguars. The Jags will host that game there at Spain Park High School, and a team of two region opponents, two rivals that are separated by less than 2 miles. So it's a game where these two teams definitely want to come out on top regardless of what's happened with their seasons to this point. Obviously have been some struggles, both 1-4 in region play. Oak Mountain still an outside shot to get into the playoffs. A little pretty unlikely, but they still do have a chance if they can win this week, beat Vestavia Hills the week after, and if Vestavia Hills loses Friday night to Hoover. So still a chance for the Eagles. Spain Park's playoff chances, I believe, are shot at this point in the year. But like I said, this rivalry matchup between these two teams just right down the road from each other, they want to make a statement. Each year, the last few years, this game's taken place near the end of the season, and you've had a couple of teams that have struggled, and then they go into this game and they win it, and it not only changes their outlook the rest of the way over the last few games, but it changes their outlook coming back the next season because it tends to start a winning streak near the end of the year as well. So coming into this matchup, we've seen the struggles from both so far. Spain Park sitting at 1-5, but the Jags come off an exciting game against Hoover where they narrowly upset the top 5 ranked Hoover Buccaneers last week on the road. It was a 35-35 game late in that contest. Spain Park actually had the ball with a couple minutes to go, a chance to win, but they throw one interception. Hoover capitalizes the score and scores shortly after, and then Spain Park gets the ball back one more time, throws one more interception, and that ends the game. So they lose that one 42-35, so an inspiring effort both offensively and defensively against one of the state's best teams in that matchup, something they can build off of even though it was an emotional loss. And for the Oak Mountain Eagles last week, they pick up another win. They're now 3-4. They've won 2 of their last 3 games as they take down Tuscaloosa County 53-32. Last Friday night. So you've got Oak Mountain that's got a little bit of momentum with the way they've been playing lately. You've got a Spain Park defense that's slowly improving in the second half of the season, and then that offense at Spain Park that's been lights out to this point so far in 2019 as well. So I think when you look at this matchup, you break it down, you've got a couple of defenses that are struggling to this point in the season, and I think that could be a big thing in this game. You've got Oak Mountain giving up 31.3 points per game, and Spain Park giving up 41.3 points per game, so a 10 points per game difference on the defensive side of the ball. That being said, both of these defenses are struggling. I expect to see two offenses, different style offenses, but I expect to see both of them to have big games in this matchup. You've got an Oak Mountain team that loves to run the option attack. Quarterback Evan Smith coming off a 3-touchdown performance last week, 2 on the ground, 1 passing, and close to 200 yards rushing in that win over Tuscaloosa County. And then you've got a Spain Park offense that's going to be pro-style, spread it out a little bit, and they're going to throw a lot with quarterback Harrison Barker, who's had an unbelievable season at Spain Park. So 2 different offenses, but 2 that are going to be extremely talented at moving the football and scoring, particularly against defenses that they can take advantage of. I think that's going to be the case this week. You've also got Spain Park coming in off an emotional loss. We'll see how they bounce back from that, but that could be something that decides this game, having on a week like that, trying to get ready for this difficult option attack that Oak Mountain's going to put out there. We'll see how the Jags can handle that, but I expect to see a back-and-forth fun environment between these two county rivals. I expect it to be exciting and thrilling, and one that you should see go down to the wire with an offense having a chance to either tie or win the game there late in that contest. We've got 3 6A games to talk about this Friday night, and we'll start with the one that has the biggest implications in a way as far as winning a region championship. That's going to be the Helena Huskies traveling to Jackson-Olin this Friday night, and the Huskies go into this game with a chance to win their first region championship in school history. And honestly, before we even get to anything else, they should end up capitalizing and making that happen at the end of the night. This is a Jackson-Olin team that Helena is simply better than this year. The Huskies come into this one off a 45-13 win over Carver Birmingham last week. They're 6-1 overall on the season, now 4-0 in region play, and winners of 5 in a row. So this Helena team's really clicking right now, playing as good a football as they have arguably ever in the school's history, now with a chance to claim their first region title in school history as well. They take on a Jackson-Olin team that's lost 5 of their last 6 games on the season. Also a team that's sitting at 2-5 overall and 0-4 in region play, and they enter this one off a 38-7 loss to Pelham. So Jackson Nolan not playing good football right now, hasn't played very inspiring throughout the season, and you expected their defense to be much better coming into the season. You expected this team to be one that competed for a region title. So Helena can't sleep on this game, but at the same time, the way that they're playing football right now, Marquise Johnson is just an absolute man out there running the football. He's had close to 200 yards rushing, or 300 yards rushing, close to 300 yards rushing the last 2 weeks against Chelsea, and then last week in that big win over Carver. And this week you've got a similar thing. The week before Helena played Carver, we saw Gabe Gamble and Xavier Langford of Pelham just churn the ball and run all over that Carver defense. This week it's the same thing against Jackson Nolan. Last week, Pelham was able to run all over them. Langford and Gamble both had big performances. Gamble around 200 yards rushing against this Jackson Nolan defense last week. Marquise Johnson is licking his chops going into this matchup, a guy that can easily put up close to 300 for a third consecutive week. I expect Helena to lean on him heavy. If they can build an early first-half lead, he'll probably get some rest. But either way, these guys want to be out there. They want to be having fun. They want to have one of their best performances of the season as they look to make school history. I think you're going to see an inspired bunch that goes into this matchup against a defense that is giving up 31.6 points per game. They're going to go in and score a lot of points behind that running attack. Quarterback Luke Stamba, a guy that can also put up some big yards with his legs. You should see a big performance from Helena in this one. Their defense has also been good, and they're taking on a Jackson Nolan offense that's scoring less than 20 points per game. Everything just lends its hand toward Helena winning this game big and claiming their first region championship. So it should be a fun night, even though on the road the Huskies should be rolling against Jackson Nolan on Friday night to their first region championship in school history. It may not be for a region championship, but this Chelsea Minor game on Friday is going to be almost arguably just as big as that game between Helena and Jackson Nolan. Chelsea, right now, they're struggling over the last two. I wouldn't say struggling. They've just lost a couple of heartbreaking games in a row by 3 points or less. 2 weeks ago, obviously, by 3 points to Helena as they lose in the final 35 seconds on a long field goal from the Huskies. And then last week, their comeback attempt falls short against Homewood, and they lose that one 27-26. So 2 heartbreaking games in a row. We'll see how they bounce back in this one, and it's a big week. They can't slouch and be looking in the past going into this matchup because this is a good minor football team, and Chelsea right now battling for a 2-seed and home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. They need to win their next 2 games. Actually, this is their final region game. They win this one, and they need Homewood to lose once, then they will be a 2-seed going into the postseason. So a big week for the Hornets against Minor this Friday night. It's a Minor team that's been inconsistent. The last time we saw them, though, they beat that same Homewood team that Chelsea just lost to 28-0. They're coming off a bye week as well, so an extra week of rest. They sit at 3-4 on the season, but more importantly, 3-1 in region play. So if Chelsea can win this one, that forces Minor to 3-2. Chelsea's going to hold that tiebreaker even with the 2 losses. Homewood would need 1 more loss to get to 3 losses, and Chelsea would be a 2-seed. So a lot to happen over the next couple weeks, but all Chelsea can do is try to win this game against Minor. And the Tigers right now defensively giving up just 19 points per game, and that's going to be key for Chelsea. Their offense has played well the last few weeks, but last week the passing game didn't come to fruition. It didn't play as well as it did against Helena. So if this Chelsea team wants to be able to score on Minor, they're going to have to show something two-dimensional, get some points through the passing game as well as Collier Blair, because Collier Blair running the football last week near 200 rushing yards, 184 total to be exact. He did just about everything he could on the offensive side of the football. We also need to see some more from this Chelsea defense. This defense that's given up 27 or more in the last 3 games after not giving up more than 17 in the first 4 games of the season. So if the defense can get back to playing like it did through those first 4 games, then I think Chelsea has a great chance to win this one. We saw Minor, like I said, they've been inconsistent. They lost to Helena 28-14, then beat Homewood 28-0. So we saw how Chelsea competed with Helena. We saw how they competed with Homewood. They competed good with both of those teams. We'll see if the inconsistency of Minor is a difference maker in this game. But overall, we need to see Chelsea's defense get back to form. They've played some difficult opponents the last couple of weeks, but haven't looked as sharp as they did early in the season, specifically early in those games. Last week they fall behind 14-0 to Homewood. The rest of the way they really played some extremely good football, but a turnover at midfield on downs and then a fumble at midfield, really two of the biggest difference makers as Homewood turned both of those into touchdowns in that game. That ended up being the difference in the final score. So Chelsea can't make mistakes. They need to see a little bit more in the passing game, and then the defense needs to get back to what we've seen earlier in the season. Nonetheless, I think they have a shot. I think this is going to be a great game, and they're going to be battling for that 2 seed. You know they're going to give a physical and good effort on Friday night as they do take on Minor in a big matchup. One final 6A game to touch on, and it's not a region matchup, but still a big one for the Pelham Panthers as they look to win their 3rd game in a row. Last week on Thursday night, take down Jackson Olin 38-7, and they've won 2 in a row after that 0-6 start on the season. Still an outside chance at a playoff spot. They sit at 2-3 in region play, so we'll see how they finish things off. A big region game against Helena in a rivalry matchup next week, but first they have an out-of-region game this week against Northridge, a team that's coming off its first win of the season this past Friday night. They win 42-14 over Brookwood, and you look at their schedule, Northridge's schedule, and their record, sitting at 1-6 overall, but they've played one of the most difficult schedules in the state to this point in the season. Their losses, those 6 losses to this point, Mountain Brook, Demopolis, McAdory, Paul Bryant, Hillcrest, Tuscaloosa, and Hueytown. So easily 6 of the best teams in the state. That being said, they've struggled on the offensive side of the football, just 11.7 points per game that they're scoring. They've been held to 14 or less in 6 of 7 and 7 or less in 5 of 7. So I know this Pelham defense, they've struggled throughout the season at points, but at the same time, they've really turned a gear. They're playing better over the last 3 weeks. You've given up 29.4 points per game overall, but the last 3 weeks they've improved drastically, and now they go up against an offense that's struggling. I do think that Pelham's defense can give up some points in this game, but the way that we're seeing Pelham play on both sides of the ball the last few weeks, they're an inspired football team, have their 2nd win this season despite that 0-6 start. They're going to be looking for a 3rd straight win, and I think it's very possible that happens. Like I said earlier, you've got Gabe Gamble coming into this game with 2 consecutive rushing performances near 200 yards. You've got Xavier Langford at quarterback, who's just gaining all sorts of momentum, already a talented runner of the football. Last week, also a strong passer. He was 11-14 with 200-plus yards passing the football as well. So a guy that's playing some great football. And they do have talent. It's young on the outside to throw to as well. So a very good offense going up against Northridge, sitting at 1-6 overall. Pelham's defense is going to be key in this game. The way their offense is playing, though, they'll have a chance no matter what happens. I expect a fun and entertaining game and another strong performance from those guys on the Pelham offensive side of the football. We've talked about the opportunities ahead for both Thompson and Helena on Friday night, but possibly the biggest game of the week, and on a tough week of great games, that's going to be Briarwood hosting Ramsey on Friday night. 2 football teams that over the last couple of years have been extremely talented, both at the 6A and 5A level. As Ramsey moved down as a state champion in 6A, they moved down to 5A 2 years ago and were a legitimate threat last year to win the title. This year, another legitimate threat. They're the number 2 team in the 5A classification and have just been playing some great football over the last few weeks, coming off a 42-12 win over normally what's a very strong and good Winona team. So Ramsey playing some good football at this point in the season. They've won 6 games in a row, 7-1 overall, 5-0 in region play, and that's the key number. Briarwood still sitting at 4-1 in region play, but they're also playing good. Obviously, last Thursday they pick up a 38-28 win over Parker. Now they get an extra day of preparation as well as they played on Thursday night. They're playing some good football to this point in the season. They've won 5 in a row now, while the Rams have won those 6 in a row. So 2 very good football teams. And I expect this to be a physical, hard-fought battle. Obviously, both of these teams want to win defensively. These are 2 very good defensive football teams. We've seen a little bit more, however, from Ramsey's offense, and that could be key in this game. If Briarwood wants to win this football game, we know what Luke Pruitt and that offensive line can give you on the offensive side of the football. Pruitt's easily capable of going for 100 yards against anybody, but now he's taking on the best defense that they will have faced to this point in the season, giving up just 14 points per game, and they've allowed more than 19 points just once on the season. So this Ramsey defense, they know what they need to do, and that's stop Luke Pruitt. If Briarwood wants to win this game, they're going to have to see freshman quarterback Christopher Vizina step up in the passing game. Guys like Blake McKenna step up receiving as well. So you're going to have to form some kind of connection in the passing game. I do think simply running the football and defensively, Briarwood can stay in this game. But Ramsey, one of the most talented teams in the state, regardless of classification, if Briarwood wants to win, they're going to have to throw the football because Ramsey's too good of a team to just line up and say, we're going to run the ball at you every time and beat you. Ramsey's also shown some promise on offense so far this season. I think that could be a difference in this game. And they've held the last three opponents to a combined 24 points, 12, 0, and 12 the last 3 weeks. So Briarwood's offense, it's got its work cut out for it going into this matchup. It's going to be an exciting one because of the physicality side of things from both of these teams and from the defensive side, as Briarwood's giving up just 17.7 points per game. I think you're going to see two defenses go out, play good early on. You're going to see offenses test things out. Briarwood's going to be in this game in the second half just like they were a year ago. We'll see how they handle that second half on the offensive side of the football, if Pruitt's able to reel off a big run or if Briarwood's able to make one of those big plays in the passing game. If they're able to do that, they have a chance to pull off a major victory over the number 2 team in the state. Coming off a bye week, the Wildcats looking for their first victory of the 2019 season. Shelby County obviously sitting at 0-7 on the season so far, and coming off a 41-7 loss to Demopolis, but also coming off a bye week, which could help them drastically to fix some things on the defensive side of the ball and to get better and healthier on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, we saw Chase Holloman injured a few weeks ago, so Caden Cardwell has stepped in as the starting quarterback. An extra week of preparation for him offensively could help them going into a matchup with a Central Tuscaloosa team that Shelby County should have a chance to beat. It's a matter of them making the plays to do so, but this team, the Falcons, have lost 5 games in a row. They sit at 2-6 overall on the season. So a great opportunity for Shelby County, but against that same Demopolis team that they lost to 41-7 2 weeks ago, Central Tuscaloosa lost to just 28-0 last week. So Central struggled to score on that very physical and tough Demopolis defense, but at the same time, their defense showed up and played extremely well. And if Shelby County wants to win this game, we know the struggles that they're having defensively this season, giving up 42.3 points per game and having given up 40 or more points in their last 6 straight games. So the defense really struggling for Shelby County right now. If they want to win this, the offense is really going to have to step up with that extra week of preparation to make some big plays on that side of the ball. Central's given up 40 or more in 3 of their last 4 games, just 29.1 on the season, but over the last few weeks they've shown that they're going to give up points. Very big opportunity for this Shelby County offense to have a chance to get in a back-and-forth game and see if that offense can make a play late to pick up a win. The Wildcats are going to come in ready off of that bye week, but they're going to have to make plays in this matchup on the offensive side of the ball, and the defense is going to have to show any sort of improvement if they want to win this one, but they'll have a chance to pick up that first win of the season. It was an unforeseen loss for the Montevallo Bulldogs last week as they fall 14-12 to Sumter Central. They're now 4-3 overall and 2-2 in region play, but there were also some unforeseen circumstances in that game. Starting quarterback Malik Bennett, he was injured in the first half of that game, didn't play at all in the second half, and a guy that's an all-state caliber quarterback at the 4A level, and he's not there for that team. What that does is it forces star receiver J.J. Evans into the starting quarterback position. That takes one of their most talented playmakers at receiver and pushes him to the quarterback. He touches the ball in every play, but he's not able to make a big play in the passing game. They do still have Jamarius Carter at receiver, who's a talented kid that can go up as a tall receiver and make plays, but when you don't have Bennett and 2 threats out wide, that really diminishes what this offense is able to do. It showed in that loss to Sumter Central. Also, some bizarre happenings in that game as Sumter Central faced 3rd and 25 late in that contest, up by those 2 points, and it looked like they were about to punt the ball, but then on the ensuing play, they fake a snap with the center, and the center rumbles 30 yards for what the referees say is a first down. So a missed call, a designed play, it looked like, to try to trick the referees, and it ended up working and possibly cost Montevallo that game. They still should have made plays to win that game themselves, but at the same time, you can't have that kind of stuff happen, especially in a big region game late in the year. You've got to have the correct call in those situations, and the officials missed that one. And Montevallo right now, they're coming in off of a loss, partly because of that, partly because of injury, and partly because they didn't make some plays when they needed to. But everything adding up, it wasn't Montevallo's night at all. Now this week, they have a chance to bounce back, and it's a big week for them against Sipsey Valley. This is a Sipsey Valley team coming off a 58-7 loss to American Christian last week, a team that's lost 3 in a row, sits at 3-4 overall. This is a game that Montevallo desperately needs to win because the next 2 weeks in region play are going to be key in determining whether Montevallo has home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs, if they can get that 2 seed or not. If they win the next 2, they control their own destiny. If they win the next 2 games, then they do get home field in the first round of the playoffs. So a key 2-week stretch, and this week you're taking on a Sipsey Valley team that's scoring just 21.3 points per game and giving up 31.3 points per game. If there's a positive to take away from last week, it's what we saw from Montevallo defensively, giving up just 14 points. It's a defense that was giving up 40-plus heading into that matchup, close to 50 points per game. And so for the defense to step up and keep them in the game, that's a positive when this offense gets healthy again, coming back heading into the postseason. We'll see if that takes shape this week. If so, you have that defense playing well. It's still a very talented offense, and even if Inabinet's out, at least they have a week to work with Evans at the quarterback position. I think you'll see a much more spirited effort on the offensive side of the offensive side of the football, regardless of who's taking the snaps at quarterback. So a big opportunity, a must-win opportunity for Montevallo this Friday night as they take on Sipsey Valley, looking to keep their home field advantage heading into the playoffs alive. We'll see how it unfolds, but a great chance for the Bulldogs. It's been a special 2 weeks for Vincent, really the entire team, but especially Tay McGregor, who scored close to 10 touchdowns the last couple of weeks for Vincent in a 2-game winning streak. This past Friday night, they take down Horseshoe Bend 43-24. They're now 2-5 overall. More importantly, 2-2 in region play in the playoff. Their playoff hopes still alive moving forward. This week it's going to be tough, though. They take on what's likely to be the number 2 team in Class 2A, Reeltown. They enter this matchup 8-0 overall this season. The Rebels are scoring 35.4 and giving up just 10.4 points per game. You've got a Vincent offense that's playing some good football behind McGregor. They've scored 94 combined points the last 2 weeks. They're averaging close to 30 points per game, the best the offense has looked in a while, particularly this year and last year. It's night and day how much better this offense is playing overall, the improvement they've showed to this point in the season. But going up against this tough defense that's giving up just 10.4 points per game, Vincent's going to struggle to score points. I mean, Reeltown's just not giving up a lot of points to anybody, so that's no fault to Vincent. It's just credit to what Reeltown's able to do on that side of the ball. Them also scoring 35.4 points per game, going up against this Vincent defense that's giving up a large chunk. It's going to be hard for Vincent to win this football game. I think the progression we've seen offensively from them, they'll be able to hang close for a little while, especially if McGregor's able to get some things going, find some running room early in that game. But taking on what likely could be a state championship team in the 2A classification, it's going to be difficult to walk out of that matchup with a win. They'll have their chances. We'll see how it unfolds on the field. But I still expect you to see that progression that we've seen throughout the season from the Vincent Yellow Jackets. Before we get into our SCR Stars of the Week segment, we'll talk about our AISA and ACSC team. The Evangel Lightning Cornerstone Chargers both going to be in action this Friday night, both coming off of victories as well. Cornerstone off their first win of the season, 28-20 against Southern Prep last week, and that was a game that wasn't scheduled until earlier last week before that game took place on Friday night. So The Cornerstone still able to come up with a big week, pick up that first victory, 28-20. Now this week they get Southern Academy, who has only lost one game this season to Chambers Academy, and Chambers is one of the best teams in the AISA. So we've seen a Southern team that scored a combined 124 points the last 2 weeks and averaging 40.5 points per game, only giving up 19.7 points per game on the defensive side of the ball. So all around a very good Southern Academy team. Cornerstone, despite coming off that first win of the season, still has shown some struggles on both sides of the ball this year. They're going to have to take a drastic leap forward in order to win that one. We'll see how they handle that tough matchup on Friday. The Evangel Lightning, they have now set themselves up to host the ACSC State Championship after taking down Lighthouse last week by a final score of 58-20. They're now 6-2 overall, and like I said, they've locked up the hosting rights for the ACSC State Championship game, where they should take on Ezekiel again here in just a few weeks. Over the last few weeks, for Evangel, they've scored 184 combined points the last 3 weeks. This offense is playing well, has a lot of momentum, but going into this matchup Friday, they take on Morgan Academy, who's a very tough AISA opponent, a team that's played some really good football teams close, including Bessemer Academy, a team that really handled Evangel earlier in the season. And Morgan only lost that game 28-14 against a perennial power in Bessemer Academy. That being said, this Evangel offense is playing some great football right now. We've seen a Morgan team that's been inconsistent defensively. They're giving up 29 points per game, just scoring 22.6 on the offensive side of the football. I think Evangel is going to have their chances to score some points offensively. If they can do that, they'll pick up another win. But like I said, an 11-man football game for them in this one. It's going to be tough. It's going to be physical. They're going to have to score points in order to win it. We've seen their offense do that the last few weeks. We'll see if it continues against Morgan. Now it's time to name our SCR Stars of the Week, and some of these numbers are just insane from what we've seen the last few weeks. A lot of these guys are playing out of their minds football right now, and we have just a couple weeks of region play left, so it couldn't be coming at a better time, and I expect to see some more big numbers this Friday night and some big region matchups. But if you look at last week, what the Thompson Warriors were able to do offensively against a Vestavia defense that was giving up just 9 points per game going into that matchup, it was just, honestly, it was berserk to watch what the Warriors were able to do from some of their most talented players. Sawyer Pate, a guy that's kind of flown under the radar this year because of what they had last year in Talia Tungavaloa. A lot of people don't realize how efficient Pate is and that he's may not be putting up the yards that Tungavaloa has, but that's because they have so many other weapons. They're able to do so many more things, running the football, doing some different things on the offensive side. He's still very capable to throw for 400-plus and 4 to 5 touchdowns a game. He's just been doing what he needs to do efficiently, and this past Friday night was a perfect example of that. 29 of 33 through the air, no interceptions, 329 yards and 4 touchdowns passing against one of the state's best defenses. This kid is unreal, and I don't think he's getting the attention he deserves. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the state this year, and he's going to have another chance to really display that against another very good Mountain Brook defense on Friday night. One reason he's having so much success is the help around him on the offensive side. Mike Petway, another big game for him, 8 receptions, 181 yards, and a touchdown in the Warriors' victory. Had a good chunk of that in the first half alone. So we'll see how he and Pate continue that connection going into this week. You've also got guys like J.B. Mitchell and Trey Roberson that can step up. This past Friday night, Trey Roberson did so. He had 3 receptions, 83 yards, and a touchdown. That's the good thing for this Thompson offense, is that Pate can step back in the pocket, and he knows he's got 1, 2, 3, 4 guys out there that can make some big-time plays, and that makes his job a lot easier and makes him more comfortable. Also helps when you have a running game that can take a lot of that pressure off as well. And we saw that from JoJo Gators this past Friday night, as they are just as deep as they can be. Gators went 11 carries, 144 yards, and a touchdown for the Warriors in that matchup. So those guys will be looked upon to step up. So will guys like Jarrett Crockett if he's back and healthy, Sam Reynolds as well. All those guys capable of incredible football games on this Thompson offense. Also in the 7A classification, we know Evan Smith, now a sophomore at Oak Mountain, had a lot of special games last year, It's been a little bit more inconsistent this year, but he showed his brilliance and what he can do again last week. Had 15 carries from the quarterback position for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns for Oak Mountain on Friday in their win over Tuscaloosa County. Also added 43 yards and a passing touchdown as well. So a strong 3-touchdown performance for him and more than 200 all-purpose yards. His running mate in the running back position at Oak Mountain, Judah Tate, 24 carries for 121 yards. He was a big reason they were able to play so well and pick up such a big win over Tuscaloosa County. Both guys going to have to play well in what I expect to be a back-and-forth affair between Spain Park and Oak Mountain on Friday night. Marquise Johnson at Helena, he's a guy that we've talked about him earlier in the show, has been outstanding the last couple of weeks and still just a junior there for the Huskies. He had 22 carries for 264 yards and 2 touchdowns in Helena's win last Friday night. I expect that to continue this week as they take on a Jackson Olin team that's struggling to stop the running game for particular offenses. I think Johnson goes in, has another big performance, and it's just unreal to see what he's done the last couple of weeks. If they make it into the playoffs, a lot of people aren't going to take Helena seriously, but with him, with an experienced quarterback, this is a very dangerous football team that may be the best running football team that we have in the state this year. Speaking of running the football, Gabe Gamble, another guy like Johnson that's taken advantage of the last few weeks against defenses that struggle to stop the run. This past Thursday night, 196 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns on 27 carries. Quarterback there at Pelham, Xavier Langford, also a strong performance this past Thursday night. 14 carries for 63 yards and 2 touchdowns running the football, but possibly his best passing game of his career. He went 11 for 14, very efficient passing the football for 228 yards and an additional touchdown as he had 3 for Pelham in that win over Jackson Olin. So the Pelham running game, the Pelham 1-2 punch there of Xavier Langford and Gabe Gamble has been dynamic the last 2 weeks in their 2-game winning streak. We'll see if that continues against Northridge on Friday night. And another guy, it just keeps on coming. The running backs in the county this year are unreal. At Chelsea, Collier Blair did just about everything he could in that game against Homewood. What a warrior he was in that one. He went off for 34 carries and had 186 yards and a touchdown. He was just, the guy, he's not the tallest guy in the world, but man, is he physical, and he's not afraid to look for the nearest guy and just run right into him to get that extra yard. So Collier Blair just continues to be one of my favorite players to watch in general, but also one of the best running backs in the county, as does Luke Pruitt at Briarwood. He had a big performance in Briarwood's win last Friday night against Carver. 24 carries, 165 yards, and a touchdown. Also added 4 catches for 44 yards. That game was actually on Thursday, but he's been unbelievable. Has gone over 100 yards in several games this season. He's going to have his biggest performance of the year against a very physical and good Ramsey defense on Friday night. If anybody can do it, it's Luke Pruitt, who's been unbelievable to watch as well this year. Also at Briarwood, Tyler Waugh, linebacker that can do just about everything you need him to do defensively. He can also jump over on the offensive side of the football and do some things for you too, as he scored 4 touchdowns running the Wildcat there on the goal line. So Tyler Waugh has just done just about everything he needs to, can also punt the football, he has done it all this year for Briarwood, and it's been outstanding to watch what he's able to do. If you're at the Briarwood-Ramsey game on Friday night as they take on Ramsey for what could be the region championship, look out for number 30 and watch how much fun he is to fly across the field. Our final SCR star of the week, that's Vincent's Tay McGregor, a guy that had 5 touchdowns in their second straight win this past Friday night, scored 3 receiving touchdowns of 52, 22, and 17 yards, and also 2 rushing touchdowns of 85 and 33 yards. Also added a 2-point conversion, 2 of those, and had kicked 3 PATs with more than 300 all-purpose yards. So we talked about what all Waugh can do for Briarwood. Vincent's Mr. Do-It-All is Tay McGregor, as he's had a special 2-week stretch. We'll see how he handles that against Reeltown and what's their biggest game of the season on Friday night. That's going to do it from here at Thompson High School, where our game of the week is going to take place on Friday night between the Warriors and the Spartans. Number 1 Warriors and number 5 Spartans, a top 5 battle between these two undefeated teams. Thompson, like we've said, with a chance to win their second region championship in the last 3 years. We'll see how they handle that here on their home field. A big night of high school football ahead. We'll be here at Thompson High School live pregame show between 5 and 5:30 to preview it all. Like we said, we got Thompson battling for a region championship, Briarwood battling for a region championship, Helena with a chance to pick up their first region title in school history, in-county matchup, Spain Park and Oak Mountain, Chelsea battling for home field advantage in the playoffs. There's so many great storylines taking place on Friday night. We'll be here live to break everything down ahead of those games from Warrior Stadium. We'll also have all of our updates on Twitter throughout the games on Friday night and our great coverage and photos as well. So sure to be an exciting night of high school football. I can't wait for it. We'll see you then. But for now, that's going to do it from here at Warrior Stadium.